Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Best Practices for Implementing Online and Blended Learning in K-12 School Districts. I'm Nicole Bono, Director of Marketing for Fuel Education. I'm really excited to see we have a great crowd here today, and we're going to jump into our webinar, but before we do so, I just wanted to provide you with a little context for our discussion and a few housekeeping items. I think this is pretty routine and you know the drill for the most part, but just want to let you know that in case you missed something or want to share the presentation with some of your colleagues, we will be making the recording available tomorrow. We'll be sending that out via email. We really want to keep this session interactive and encourage you to submit questions throughout the presentation. We will address as many of those as possible at the end of the presentation, and for those that we miss, we will follow up directly with you. Also want to let you know, if you see on the right hand of your screen, that we encourage you to tweet throughout, and you can use the handle @FuelEducation and #ESNWebinar. So without further ado, I wanted to share just quickly a little bit about Fuel Education. So our mission at Fuel Education is to partner with schools and districts to personalize and transform the education experience inside and outside the classroom by leveraging the power of technology-enabled learning. So what does that mean? That means that we offer the industry's largest catalog of online courses. We have more than 500 unique courses and titles for pre-K through 12th grade, and they were all specifically designed for full-time and blended programs. And we're especially pleased to announce that for those of you in California, we have 100 A-to-G approved courses. We've served over 2,000 school districts across the whole U.S., and provide the widest range of solutions across all grade levels, from an award-winning pre-K program called Embark to online courses in STEM, AP, electives, remediation, and test readiness for high school students. And with all of these courses, we deliver them through our platform called Peak. With Peak, what it is really one view for administrators, teachers, and students, so they can all be collaborating and accessing the same information. There are dashboards and analytics to help track student progress, and also with the Peak Library, you have the ability to customize courses and pull in Fuel Ed courses, open educational resources, third-party courses, and teacher-created content. So we really do strive to personalize learning. So given the position in the industry, we do our best to keep our pulse on trends and are constantly collecting data to help us understand the market better. And one of the ways we do this is by partnering with MDR's EdNet Insight service to conduct an annual benchmark survey. And the purpose of this study was to determine best practices and lessons learned when implementing online and blended programs in K-12 schools. We're pleased to say this is the third benchmark survey, and now that we've done this for 3 years, it's really interesting to start to be able to compare year-over-year trends. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Marcy Goldberg, and she's with MDR EdNet Insight and has been our key researcher for this study. For those of you who aren't familiar with MDR, they're the leading provider of education marketing information and services in the U.S. Along with Marcy, very pleased to have two of our customers who are going to be sharing their practical views on online and blended learning. We have Dan Mallant, Coordinator of Virtual Education from Ephrata Area School District in Pennsylvania, and Joel Smith, District e-learning facilitator from Spring Branch ISD in Texas. So at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Dan and Joel to give a brief intro on their programs. Dan?
Hello. It is Dan Mallant here from Ephrata, Pennsylvania. So our next slide kind of moves into who we are. We are in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Our school is a fairly high-performing school. We received the bronze medal and the silver medal this past year from U.S. News and World Report, respectively the last 2 years rather. And like I said, we were doing pretty well. Our program began about 6 years, about 2009 when we really began to get into this. And we run a full-time cyber. We run a hybrid classes, so really, which means you can take it either on-site or online. You can come into the school as you'd like. We have e-labs throughout the entire district. We originally launched as a 9 to 12 school when we began, and backing up from that, even it was really a function of summer school is what it was. I took over summer school a long time ago, and was really fairly irritated the way we were educating people the exact same way that we had failed them the first time. And so a natural progression was to look to the online and see how we could kind of diagnose some of those strengths and weaknesses. So that's how we began this process. And we've been evolving each year. As I said, we were changing. The classroom is really our next step. So we do a lot of things that almost function as safety nets for the school. The next step for the Effort Area School District is really personalizing that learning. That's coming up in the next couple of years to really get inside the classroom and make sure we change how it works so people don't need, oftentimes all my services, that we can do a lot within the classroom itself. As for our school itself, there is no distinction between online and on-site. So a graduate of the Effort Area School District is whether they took courses online or took them on-site, or it really doesn't make a difference. You don't see that on the transcript. You don't see it in any other function. They have all the rights and responsibilities of every other student in the district. And we have roughly in the program, with all the different programs, around 200 students throughout the year. And that includes, we have our FUEL-Ed. We do use the FUEL-Ed teachers. We do have 5 staff for the online on-site staff here at Washington. We have 6 e-lab teachers throughout the district, 1 administrator, that's myself, and 1 administrative assistant, and we are a K-12 program, so we handle all areas, and as a matter of fact, we're just getting to pre-K this year to see how we can kind of impact that raw material before it gets to our district. So that's about an overview of us. Joel?
Okay, this is Joel Smith. I'm with Spring Branch ISD. We are in the west side of Houston. We were suburban, but the city's grown up around us, so I think we're kind of more urban these days. And it's a very diverse district straddling I-10 that has very affluent, extremely affluent in one part of our district, and very low socioeconomic status in other parts of our district. So we have a widespread range there. Our program is actually housed in the Academy of Choice, which is a district-authorized alternative school for the public. It's part of a public district. We have 3 umbrella programs in the Academy of Choice. We have a full-time face-to-face day school, a night school that gives some flexibility. It actually starts more in the afternoon and runs till the evening. And then we also have hybrid learning and virtual course program. The virtual program, or the cyber school, actually started out as was funded by the state to help build up their Texas Virtual School Network, which is a public virtual network run by the state of Texas that brings together providers and receivers. We're one of about a dozen providers. But after designing courses and getting the teachers educated and started on that, we also opened it up across the district and within our own campus. And that has also morphed into doing it in a blended or hybrid mode as well. We have anywhere from 350 to 800 students at a time. We run, as I said, both face-to-face and virtual, and we do it in all 3 parts of the year. So fall, spring, and summer actually turns out to be our biggest time, because compared to traditional summer school, our customers, our clients really, really like the options of doing online or blended. We have the students come in for test proctoring, so we run we run a face-to-face support center during the summer, so they can come in and test or get help, and or they can work on their classes from anywhere in the world. And we've got a lot of people that are doing a lot of traveling, doing activities, working, and actually even going to residences out of the state. So they love being able to do that online in the summer. On our staff, you can see there we've got about 22, so we're kind of a lean little staff here. That includes some hybrid teachers. We've also got 4 that do full-time, or not full-time virtual, but they are running our cyber school. I'm the e-learning facilitator here, and we've got a couple counselors and some other staff as well. One of the things we like with Fuel Ed is that we've been able to access a variety of resources that help run our program. So we've got our embedded Fuel Ed content, where it was great that our teachers could get online quickly and start teaching classes without actually having to write a class. So we do that, and we use that from Fuel Ed. But we also have certain places where we don't have our own teachers, so we like the ability to use Fuel Ed's teachers and courses and be able to offer those out through the district or even across the state in some cases. We launched our virtual program in 2009 and then followed that on with Inside House in 2010. How about you, Marcy?
Great. Thanks. Hello, everyone. I'm Marcy Goldberg, President of K-12 Market Advisors. I run a consulting firm that helps educational companies with marketing and business strategy, and I will also work with MDR's EdNet Insight service to conduct third-party market research. The Fuel education research we'll be discussing today was completed through MDR's EdNet Insight service. The research was conducted in May of 2014 through an online survey. Respondents were screened to those having experience offering online learning programs to ensure they were knowledgeable about the subject matter. So respondents who did not offer online learning programs were terminated from the survey. In the end, 173 people completed the survey. The job title breakdown is in the pie chart on the left. 37% were superintendents in districts with online learning programs. 31% were curriculum and instructional coordinators. 13% were assistant superintendents. And 19%, that purple piece of the pie, were comprised of a mix of principals, instructional technology directors, academic coaches, special ed directors, counselors, and teachers. The respondents represented a good mix of district size, as seen by the nice distribution of color in the pie chart on the right side of this slide, and also represented a good mix of metropolitan statuses, meaning a good mix of urban, suburban, and rural districts. Okay, to start, let's talk about 2 working definitions so we are all on the same page. And these are definitions for blended and fully online learning. Both of these definitions are taken from the Clayton Christensen Institute. Fully online learning is where the students learn outside of the brick and mortar location, and the majority of the curriculum is delivered online with some element of student control over time, place, path, and or pace. So this is a fairly straightforward definition. The blended learning definition, however, is a bit more challenging because there are different interpretations of blended learning. First of all, to distinguish blended from fully online, blended is a mix of learning both online and on-site. The real blurring of the lines often comes with blended learning and the technology-enabled classroom. The clear differentiator of blended learning versus a classroom using technology is that with blended learning, the student has control over path and or pace of learning. So before we dive into the survey results, we wanted to ask you all what models of online learning you have deployed in your district. So you should see an online survey in front of you, and we want to know what model have you deployed in your district? Blended, fully online, both blended and fully online, no online learning models yet, or not applicable, or you don't know. So again, we'd like to hear from you about what models of online learning you have deployed in your district. Again, the options are blended, fully online, both blended and fully online, no online learning models yet, or not applicable or you don't know. So let's check out the results. Okay, let's see. So it looks like 34% of you have both blended and a fully online model. Next, 27% have a blended model. 17% don't know or online learning is not applicable. 15% for no online learning models as of yet, and 6% are using a fully online model. So now let's look at what the survey says and compare. For types of online learning programs, 93% of respondents that have some sort of online offering have online courses. The online courses referred to here, and we're looking at the table on the left side, could offer original credit or credit recovery. 34% of respondents offer full-time online programs. A full-time online program serves full-time students with 4 or more courses. The statistics on the right, on the table on the right, deal with what is the primary model of online learning, blended or fully online. While 27% of you are using blended learning, the national survey shows that 73% of districts that are offering online learning have a blended model versus 27% that have a fully online learning model. Thus, blended learning is becoming a popular delivery model. And to talk more about blended learning and the program at Ephrata Virtual Academy, I'll turn it over to Dan.
Okay, so right in front of you are the 3 options. So if you were to go on our website and you were in the Ephrata Area School District, you would see an online registration form, and that registration form would feed right back to us immediately, and it would ask you why you'd like to join. And there's no qualification to join, so we certainly don't restrict anyone. You really just have to live in the Ephrata Area School District, and it asks you why you'd like to join, what you'd like to go on site for, what you'd like to do online. Kind of just pick your brain about it. There's also in that same section there's a section on what makes a good online learner and whether or not it's kind of an immediate quiz, and it asks you, are you a good candidate for online learning based on these questions? And I can get you that website later. It's really just www.easdpa.org, but we can put that up a little later. So option 1 is really fully asynchronous learning, which in Pennsylvania I think we have now 15 cyber charter schools, and you get to go to any one of those if you live in the state of Pennsylvania. So that really is our primary kind of competition. So we really try and meet that same option, and Fuel Ed is the biggest name out there, so we partnered with them. We'd also partner with Advanced Academics and Pearson, but we'd partner with K-12, especially for their name, the kind of reputation they've gotten for themselves and being quality online curriculum. And we offered to them what they could get at the cyber charter schools, which is the ability to take all their courses at home and work asynchronously, following the day's schedule. So from there, we use their teachers, the K-12, the Fuel Ed teachers, and we also offer them the opportunity to go to any school district-sponsored event. So they are still part of the Ephrata Area School District, and they can do everything that is an Ephrata Area School District, but never actually attend the physical environment. We do require that they take midterms and finals on site. That was a little deal we made with our teachers. We said, we'll know who they are. I meet with them once every 2 weeks, and we'll discuss more of that in best practices. But so that's the asynchronous model. The hybrid model, of course, is they can do all their courses on site or online, except for maybe 1 or 2, which they'd like to do on site. Math is often a sticking point, so we have they come into school for math. At the elementary level, a lot of times it's music and art, and even at the secondary level. But math is usually the number one thing, math and science, they'd like to come on site for, because that becomes so tricky without a teacher sometimes face-to-face. So they can take that online or on site, depending on what they'd like to do. That's the hybrid model. And our third model is the Learning Lab at Washington. We opened up an elementary school. It was one they were ready to shut down, and we kind of filled it full of computers and staffed it with some teachers, and we made it a way for students to get out of the traditional high school. That's a 9 to 12 program, and the 9th grade through 12th grade. And if they meet a certain criteria, we've done all that we can at the high school to support them, and it comes a time when they'd like to go off-site, or if they were doing work online, if they were taking option 1, doing it asynchronously and realized they need more structure, then by all means they come to us, and we're open from 8 a.m. to 8:30 at night. That's kind of the continuum of options. We do have labs in each school. The high school has a lab, the middle school, and all the elementary school has spots for students if, for example, they want to take art in the morning and they also want to take math, but doesn't happen till 12. They may go to the lab during that time to work on their coursework. So that really is the continuum, asynchronous, hybrid, or the learning lab options that we offer here in Ephrata.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, getting back to the survey data. The survey asked the educators what were important attributes for successful online programs, with this slide displaying results for full-time online programs and online courses. Generally, there was consistency for full-time programs and online courses with the same top 5 attributes for success for both, although the rank order was slightly different between the two types of programs. This slide rank orders the attributes according to the results for online courses. To start, rigorous and engaging curriculum is slightly more important for online courses at 94% than for full-time programs at 88%. Finding the right challenge and engagement factor is so important to motivate the students to complete the program. Next is tracking student progress and having adequate reporting tools. Roughly 9 out of 10 respondents cite this as important for all types of online programs. Reporting tools enable teachers to monitor student progress, to see who's on target, and identify who needs additional help. Third is the value of teachers available to intervene and assist struggling students. Joe will speak in a minute about the importance of the teacher's role in online learning. Fourth attribute is providing students with enough training and clear expectations about taking an online course. 92% for full-time programs and 83% for online courses. Student training, just because these students are good with technology and have grown up as digital natives, we cannot assume they know how to take an online course. Student training can include how to use the technology tools, communication systems, and time management, among other items. And Joe will also speak to this in a minute. The last attribute is training instructors in delivering online courses. Training is always crucial for the success of any program in schools, whether online or face-to-face, technology-based or not. Okay, now I will turn it over to Joel.
Thank you, Marcy. Marcy, as you said, the teacher's role is real important, and it's also really tough for a lot of teachers to get a handle on what their roles are, especially in the migration to more of a blended learning where path and pace start to diverge as students, make their own way through the courses. So I even went through this when I was managing a lab and found that, it's really tough to figure out what you do. And so, the first part is I don't like the phrase sage on the stage, but it's become very common where, traditional lecture style. But even with teachers that are doing group learning, a lot of the, very active management of the class is kind of that early stage that we're used to as teachers, where we're the dispensers of knowledge or the dispensers of the activities, even if you're doing group work. But more importantly is the timekeeper role as well, where we're micromanaging. Okay, we're going to do the warm-up for 3 minutes, and then we're going to do this group activity, and then I've got just enough time for the quiz at the end or the exit tickets. So we're kind of funneling the students through the progression of the course as we're managing the classroom. But then comes this, okay, we're going to do blended learning, and I've found, even again with myself, sometimes you get the deer in the headlights look. All right, where exactly is my role? The instruction's now on the computer. Students are going off doing their own thing in different courses, different parts of the course, and where do I fit in? So the computer's doing the primary instruction. Sometimes even the students will throw that at you and say, well, you're not my teacher, you're just managing the lab. And so you're kind of trying to figure out where you can add value. And that's what a big change from, role number one, from being 100% or 90% to feeling almost like you're zero in this thing. So the next evolution often is to jump in and kind of say, okay, I can be a resource. And you'll get that almost quickly with some students because they'll look at what's on the computer and go, wait, I don't understand what they're saying, because that way of presenting the lesson just doesn't speak to me. It isn't relevant to my learning, or it may be, presented in a very different way than and not scaffolded on something that I've learned. So then you're a resource doing some secondary teaching, finding some way from knowing your students to make it relevant and personal for them, or even building on what you know of your own district's curriculum so that you can scaffold on the way that they were taught. So you become a resource and you start to feel like, okay, I'm adding some value here. But the best part is when you get to that final stage, number 4, and you feel more of a facilitator and initiator of interventions where you have more familiarity with what's going on with the curriculum. You've typically been through it online or in a blended environment once or twice. And you start to anticipate where the trouble problems are, where students, or like I said, the district teaches things a little different way, or you found that little magic bullet that you can trot out, or you even see students coming in as a small cohort working through the class together, and they kind of are about to hit the same spot, and you say, okay, now you're about to come into this trig part, so I'm going to take you aside and we're going to do a little workshop on SOHCAHTOA, and that'll kind of help set the stage. The other big advantage of this role for teachers is it really helps break up the online aspect of the class. And I had that today. I actually teach a face-to-face class as well, and one of the students said, I'm tired of being online. Another student at the very same time said, no, I want to stay online. But it's good to break it up. It facilitates some great social development. You get some great conversations going in the class as well. So it's a nice way to do the blending of the course. Otherwise it becomes too much of an online. And so you've got to kind of mix it up a little for the students. Let me go to the next slide here. And here are some things that we do and to try and help with this. And one of the most important things is setting expectations, especially in the fully online, but even in the blended environment. The counselors, we work with them a lot throughout the district in helping to set the stage for what students need to do in a blended environment so they don't come in thinking, I'm going to do the work, the teacher needs to leave me alone. Or, the teacher is going to have the opposite way, where I think the teacher is going to perform every day and present the material to me individually. So we've got to set the expectations right for that. So we've got some face-to-face meetings we do, either counselors and students. Sometimes we pull them in a group. We have some videos up on the website on how to work in a virtual class. What does it look like? And then, the other funny thing is so much of it is how will this impact my GPA? And in our district, certain courses are GPA calculated or not, depending on when they're taken, both throughout the school day or also fall, spring versus summer. And you might think that, okay, it's online, I'm not sure, so maybe I don't want it to impact my GPA. But we find certain times, like in the summer, students don't want to take a certain class because they do want that extra bump that an AP online course will give them. So sometimes they'll do that in the spring or fall instead. And number 2 is such a critical thing, and we've really got some great providers here in Texas as part of the Virtual School Network where they do survival skills training, and we do that as well. And you kind of start collecting your gotta knows to put into that kind of class. So things like how do you take a screenshot? That's one of the most valuable things that we've started doing is, students use some software that's free out online that they can download, get installed, practice taking a screenshot, and it really helps us when we're trying to support them. And, when they're doing work at home, even in a blended environment, they can take a screenshot of what happened, send it to the teacher, and that really helps with supporting it. We're trying to do some, make sure we have active engagement between students and teachers as well as student to student. So we do discussion forums, and we want to make sure that they know in the survival skills class how to participate, how to post, how to respond, and how to do assessments. So we have a simple little quiz that we let the students take. And then also, how do you get help, getting all their plugins taken care of before they get into the class? Where do they go for help? And the last one there, how much time to spend on a class, boy, that's a big one. The pacing and the just the scheduling of their courses, because they'll be taking them at different times and working on them at different times is such an important thing. So while we're no longer in the role of a teacher as the micromanager, we are definitely needing to be active in the time management aspect, because we're starting to move that to them, help them be more self-monitoring, self-sufficient. And so they need some help on that, and that's where teachers need to not step back entirely and out of the picture, but to get involved with it and help guide them through, especially when they have a hiccup or a lapse. And sometimes you just kind of need to reroute the class and reallocate the time for them. Okay, Marcy, back to you.
All right. Thanks, Joel. So now we turn back to more survey data and the topic of personalized learning. Online and blended learning certainly allows schools and districts to personalize the learning experience. The survey asked participants to rank the importance of various factors in creating an effective personalized learning program. The results are on the slide. 79% of respondents cited students working at their own pace as an important factor in creating an effective personalized learning experience. And 69% noted the ability for students to receive instructional and system help when needed. And 67% thought it was important to provide students with flexibility around the time of day or week that the coursework is completed. The summary here is that all 6 of the attributes listed on this slide had more than half of the respondents cited as important, showing that there are a number of factors that must come together for an effective personalized learning program. So now Joel and Dan are going to elaborate on their experiences offering personalized learning for their students, and I think Joel is going to go first.
Thank you. Yeah, as I mentioned at the opening, our district is very, very diverse, to where we have some schools almost 100% free and reduced lunch and other schools in single digits. And so we've got to be able to provide some offerings that meet all of their needs. And that's the one thing about blended and virtual, is that it really does offer that some flexibility around it that they need. Some of our students, I kind of call it from ballet to babies. We've got some students going off to dance with the Houston Ballet during the day, so they'll take their core classes online or on the campus, and we have it as early as the middle schools, where they'll take their 4 core on campus in the morning, leave at lunch, go down to Houston Ballet, have their rehearsals during the day, and then actually work on their other classes online from Houston Ballet in the evenings or nights, and able to work on it more on the weekends in between performances. So it's a real great flexibility for them. We've got other students training for junior and participating in junior Olympics or other national events, and so travel becomes a very big issue for them, and so the flexibility there is really key. But on the other hand, we've also got students that are teenage parents, and they need to be able to work around their babies. Maybe they are a significant caregiver in their own household because their parents work, and so they've got to take care of siblings. So we've got to offer that flexibility to those students so that they can still participate in the academic world. Sometimes they have work issues that they have to work around. So the flexibility of online blended learning is really critical. Dan?
Yeah, Joel, thanks. I mean, you covered a lot there, and as you look at those factors, you can almost rank all of them as they did at the very top. I could see why none of them got under 50%. I think you mentioned a lot of it. Our programs are fairly distinct when we look at our online program, our fully online program, and the program that we do on-site, the online on-site, the Washington lab. Those two actually house usually 2 different types of people. That baby end of things, as you said, of the teen moms and that kind of thing, that's usually our online on-site program where you need that flexibility, and you need we run them in any of 4-hour shots, so they can come from 8 to 12 or 12 to 4 or 4:30 to 8:30 or all of the above. We offer the place. Our doors are always open to everybody, but we lock them into a certain schedule because that type of student really needs some structure. They need some help. They need, if you look at Bloom's taxonomy, we have to kind of hit those areas of need first, and I think the online on-site campus kind of does that piece of it. If you can get them on-site for the actual courses, with the teacher right in front of you, that's outstanding too. But that's kind of where we've met. Whereas, our we have one girl, and as you said, who's dancing. We have one on Dance Moms. We have one who they do gymnastics across the country. That's our typical kind of online program student who needs that ability to do anytime, anywhere, and doesn't need a lot of support because their parents are right there with them. They're helping them out. That type of student is very successful in our online a completely asynchronous environment. And some of the other things, you mentioned the flexibility to move at whatever pace they get, and our mantra here is to always hit kids at their need. If they need to accelerate, then by all means let them accelerate. If they need support, we got to find out where that is, and you got to use the online data to tell you exactly where you're at in that process. So, if a kid does a quick check and they fail, they don't do well on the real quick assessment, then that's where you get involved. So let's try it again. Let me look at your notes. Let me look what you've done to get some support. So we try and meet their support as much as we can right where they need it. So I think that just about covers that area.
Okay, great. So to conclude the slide portion of this session, Dan and then Joel will offer tips for best practices when setting up an online learning program. Dan?
Sure. I think the first part, Joel mentioned it, that early intervention, that sign-up process, you got to do some. I don't know if Joel's yours is face-to-face. I know ours is face-to-face. We do as much face-to-face as we can that is allowed by these schedules. So the first thing we do, once they fill out that form, we get them in here face-to-face and explain the real pluses and minuses and the benefits and the responsibilities of doing work online. That meeting has been absolutely crucial for us, that to kind of explain how can we support you, what do you need to do at home. We make them draw up. If you look at our sign-in sheet when they come in, I have them fill this out and tell me where they're going to study, what it looks like, what it feels like, what are the distractions, what time are you going to get up, what time are you going to start work, what time are you going to eat lunch. It helps to give an idea of what structure is. Now, people like the Dance Moms kids, that's all over the place. But in general, just offering some kind of structure and talking them through it, saying that we can't mandate this, but this is just us touching base with you. This is what's succeeded. And when you're not telling them what has to be a certain way, everybody's receptive to how that goes. And then, kind of walking them through the processes, as Joel said, making sure they have the equipment, make sure they know how to work the computer, make sure they know how to work the printer, make sure we have support for them at all times. And like I said, set daily protocols on teacher and student intervention so we know what it is. Now, what you have in front of you is what I had about the on-site piece. Where the students come on-site, we really have mandatory check-ins. If they're off-site, if they're asynchronous, then we meet every 2 weeks no matter what, face-to-face. We get the parents in, we meet them to support them, congratulate them, say, hey, how do we support you? Or, say, hey, maybe it's time to make an adjustment. Now, if they're on-site, we have a different way of going about things to meet those needs of that unique set of kids that need support. Our district is around almost 50% free and reduced lunch. So although we do well, it's not without a lot of challenges. The actual school district itself is around 48%. Free and reduced. So we've got a lot of kids who need a lot of support, and that's why the lab seems so important to our district. When the kids get here, in whatever session they do, the first thing the teacher does, believe it or not, is call them by name. If they're actually evaluated on these next things, they have to call the student by their first name. Say, hi, Joe, hi, Sally, how you doing today, and not talk about anything academic. Then we move them back into the classroom, and they go over their daily goals. They sit down and individually talk about what the daily goal, because everyone's got a different one, because we have all different classes moving at the exact same time because they're just in a lab all taking different courses. And then there's a quick check-in they do to see how they're going compared to the goals they set for themselves. And then one of the interventions is a non-academic. It must be a non-academic intervention. I did a study I did it last year, a year and a half ago, where I had the students rate the interventions that the teachers gave them over a 2-month period of time, and they marked every time the teacher talked with them. They marked down whether it was useful, not useful, whether it helped. And interestingly enough, between the daily goals, the check-ins, the non-academic check-ins, and the end of the day send-off, the ease by by almost 50%, it was the non-academic when the teacher came around and talked to them and said, "How are you doing?" And that's a forced thing. We actually tell the teachers, you must go talk to each student about something completely non-academic. I don't want to mention what course they're in right now. I just want to talk about those non-academic things. So it's that chance to kind of meet on that human level that sometimes gets lost. And then of course in that same vein is the end of the day positive send off. So even if they didn't get their goal for the day, tomorrow's another day, and send them off that way, and make sure they understand completely we're here to support them. And if today wasn't great, then tomorrow's going to be better. There's a reality check, but there are enough reality checks built into this day that was a necessary part, and they actually get evaluated by me on how they do those interactions. So, and the next two bullets there just kind of talk about the things I had just said. They must call their student by name. They must do non-academic things. The teacher must greet and say goodbye to using their first names. And that sounds small, but it actually was pretty big to actually make sure their first names are spoken and that they're not anonymous in any way. That we take the anonymity. We found that anonymity is the enemy of our program. And teachers are evaluated on those interventions, So the other way they're evaluated is I told the teacher, one of the things I found was that students don't know what their goals are. They're here. They're not sure why they're here. And so I put into the evaluation system that if the students don't know how many credits they need to get to that next step or what their goal is for getting out of school, then they're going to be held accountable for that. And we all agreed to that. It's not it's a very collegial environment. So, but they agreed that that's worth doing, and they thought they couldn't do it, and they've all reached that goal, and everyone seems to know what they're doing now. So we set the goals, and we create those personalized intervention for each one. So that's about it for me for the best practices.
Yeah, just to echo what Dan was saying about the technology intervention, I've seen more research coming out in articles lately about the fact that digital learners aren't quite as productive as we think they are. And one of the best ways, and frankly, talking with parents has been an important place for this message as well, is I've kind of found a good wording for it. Students are great with entertainment technology, not so much with workplace technology. And so that's one of those where I try to differentiate that we need to really help them with the workplace technology. The other best practices I've got here are, as I mentioned before, assisting with pacing. And one of the interesting things I actually did research into my own students during a summer session is it's not always what you think or the students that you think. What I found surprisingly was the high achievers are often the ones that need this help the most and interventions on time allocation. My, dime store psychology is those kids are overextended. They're also very much, working on pleasing people, and the people who are in front of them the most are the ones that will get their attention. So one of the things as a facilitator in an online or blended environment is getting their attention and giving them the right to say no to other adults in favor of the blended course. The other part, the last bullet about explaining the academic metrics, as you start moving into blended learning and working with online or learning management systems, you'll find that commonly there are 3 metrics that are thrown out there, and it's really important to mention to the students and to the parents what those are. I even would sit down at times and go out over on a weekly basis where they stand on each of those 3 metrics. And the big thing is that we're so used to chunking in 6 weeks grades and 6 weeks modules that there's 1 grade into the 6 weeks and maybe 2 at the end of the semester if you count the final exam and the semester average. Whereas when you're working in an online system, you'll frequently see the cumulative average, which is the semester average, which is horrible at the beginning of the semester. So they score hundreds on 3 straight quizzes, and yet their cumulative average is 0.02 because it's real early in the semester and there's just a lot of work ahead of them. So you got to say, ignore that one right now. Later in the semester, that's a big one to pay attention to. The grade to date is frequently only based on the work that they've done. So again, in that example, 3 quizzes, 100%. My grade to date's 100%. I'm doing wonderful, which may be true if you're in the first week of the course. But if you've only done 3 quizzes later in the semester, that's not a very good one. And finally, the percent complete is another important one. It's kind of how much of the class you've done. And one of the things that we've found is that students will look at that grade to date and they'll realize, okay, it's late in the semester, now we're coming up to, say, another month from now or a couple weeks from now. I'm almost to the end of the course. I've got an 85% average. If they don't look at the percent complete and see that they've only done 80% of the course, then they don't realize that if they stop now, their average is a 64. They'll see the 85 and forget to multiply it by the percent complete. So these are some things that are really good best practices for sitting down with students and helping them learn how to manage themselves, both on their time and on their performance.
Okay, I think that wraps up the webinar, and we are going to move on to Q&A. I see a lot of questions coming in. I just wanted to, again, thank Marcy, Dan, and Joel for sharing all your insights with us. And as a reminder, we will be emailing out tomorrow a copy of both the benchmark report and also a recording of the webinar, which was done with MDR EdNet Insight. So at this time, I want to go ahead and open it up for questions. And let's see. First question we have here is on assessment strategies. So Joel, do you want to take a stab at answering that first? And then Dan, you can follow up.
Sure. Actually, one of the things that I think is terrific in a blended environment is now the ability to kind of take some gamification and apply it in assessment strategies. And one of the things is crash, burn, learn is kind of the buzzwords for gamification. And so, like with math, it's a great ability to say, okay, take that quiz as many times as you want. It's more for practice. And each time you crash, you need to go learn something like you would in a game, and then turn around, come back, take it again. Now the tests, we want to make sure you know what you're doing before you go into that, and that's where the quizzes come in. It's kind of a monitoring. You've got to get to a good mastery level before you can take the test. But one of the other things is with assessment is you've got to watch out for churning, where students aren't learning. They're just crashing and burning and doing it again, and they crash and burn in the same place over and over again. So that's one of the things with assessments that we want to do and make sure. The other piece I would also recommend is, kind of let the computer do some of the grading for you. That's one of the big benefits, and makes crash, burn, learn available, and so let the automatic grading happen. But to get some higher level blooms in there, you're going to probably need to have some manually graded items, and so just plan for that. You can have tests mixed with both of them where the computer grades 80% of the assessment and then you're grading another 20%. Now obviously that depends on the subject area you're teaching. Dan?
Yeah, Joel, I couldn't agree more. I think that last part you said about the idea is not to have teachers, glued to a computer as much as possible. It certainly is to increase. There's certain things we just don't need to do anymore, and that computers can do a little better than we can, and that's simple grading, simple, how are those things going? We don't need to spend our time doing that. We need to spend our time meeting kids at the level they need us to meet them at. And I think that comes from that quick grading, and then, as you said, when you get into those higher level learning activities, then that's when you want the teacher really involved, bringing the student up, talking with them, talking over the phone with them, and saying, this is what you need. Tell me what you were thinking here, kind of making them almost Socratically taking them through the process of learning, which is ideal. And again, and online learning can do that. And the other thing I'd like to add, I'd like to think we're in almost that gamification mode. I'm not quite there yet, but inside that, or rather outside that almost a little bit, is the portfolio. I think what online learning does well is it creates that portfolio for you, and it's everything you've learned is right there in front of you, and it's accessible to you at all times, and you're writing assignments, all those things are right there inside the portfolio, and the opportunities that online learning creates to build in that portfolio and to kind of make it, before you get to some of those assessments that we have to do, those written assessments, we have to do, the portfolio can be much more open in that way, to having them do some really exciting, individualized projects along the way.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question. We'll start with you again, Joel. What is your greatest obstacle challenge to success in a blended environment? What's your advice to overcoming it?
I would say try not to distill it down to one. There are a lot of different obstacles, and I think I covered a lot of them here. The biggest one is kind of I saw a question in the Q&A about cheating. That's one of the biggest ones I think is that we run into is, that surrendering a little bit of control, but still figuring out how to manage accountability. And that's where, if you've got good assessments and frequent assessments in there, and that's where there are certain major assessments like the unit tests where we really focus on a very rigid test environment where we can see the screens and make sure they're not going out to other websites or Skyping with their smartest friends. But the other part is I think, as Dan's spoken to really well here, the idea of the teachers being active and then using that kind of softer assessment strategy where you just know your students and you know what they're capable of. I've had great conversations with some of the Fuel Ed teachers in the world languages where they talk about how obvious it is when you know what your student's ability is in Spanish to see them submit something that is so high out of their ability range that it's obviously come from Google Translate. So some of those things where you trust the process. Dan?
Yeah. And I think you nailed it. I think one of the primary issues we run into is supporting the learner, and that's what you have to keep doing. I think you meet them. Our biggest challenge, of course, as I said before, is anonymity. So if they start ignoring us, then we know things have gone wrong. We really just kind of keep a lot of contact up, and we have found that with contact, and we know when they start ignoring us, that things that are really going a bad direction. And I'll go out and make home visits. To see how things are going. I'll let them know I'm coming, but if they don't want to come to me, then I will go to them. So I really do fight anonymity as my number one enemy. And if, like on our on-site program, if they don't show up, then we're going to find out why that is. And we challenge some of the assumptions of those kids who land at that spot where if you have a low socioeconomic group, I think some of the common thought is those parents aren't as engaged, or by high school rather, at least they're not as engaged, or the kid's been in trouble a lot, they're done. We challenge those assumptions. You have to really challenge every assumption that comes with a kid, even when they come to your desk and say, listen, this is what we do because this is what supports you. What's been done in the past is in the past. So we have to kind of meet them right where they are and say, this is what works. Us seeing you, us talking to you, and us helping you is what works well. And as long as you come from that way, then things typically go a good direction.
Okay, good. I think we have time for one more question. So I'm going to change the topic a little bit. And Joel, we'll have you go first again. Do you know how involved parents are with Fuel Ed? Do they stay connected with their student more or less than a traditional student? So I guess if you could talk a little bit about the parent role with an online and blended program.
Sure, be happy to. I would say it's kind of the same. You've got some parents that are very involved, the helicopter parents, and they're the same way with online courses where there again it's great to know the students so you can tell whether it's the parent or the student doing the work. And if the level's appropriate, we've got some AP courses where their engineering fathers seem to be more active than you might think is appropriate. So you want to make sure you're gauging what the student is capable of doing and their abilities, where the learning is there. And then you've got other students where you really need to get both the parent and the student more actively. Dan was talking about it. When they become more anonymous, then you reach out to anybody you can in the village to help raise that learner. And so, I look to the counselors, I look to the parents, and try to get them involved. And And as I said, same thing with the role with the teachers is they're not always quite sure what their role is. They're often get some parents that are saying, the technology is way past me, and yet when I sit down and talk with them, turns out they're doing a lot of workplace technology that is much more applicable than what the students are actually doing. And it kind of goes back to the other question too is, what's the biggest challenge is, is it Facebook? No, students daydreamed before, so they can not engage or they can engage, and you'll know it when they are and you'll know it when they're not. So I think that's kind of the same way. And, so reaching out to the parents, getting them involved. And, the nice thing about this is we've kind of all been talking about is if you let the technology help you, it really frees you up to spend more time doing those calls with the parents because you are not managing or micromanaging the lessons each time. You can do some more high-value things like conferencing with the parents and conferencing with the students and helping to coach them. Dan?
Yeah. What I found actually that's the best side of FuelEd, in my opinion, especially the K-8 version of that. The parents have to be so involved in that, and the feedback I've gotten from parents over the years, and I forget what year we're on now, 5th year of this, that they really are amazed at how much time they have to spend with their student and how much that changes their relationship. And one of the discussions I'll have with parents is if this is a good idea, then this is going to go well. You'll always do battle with your children. There are battles with parents and children. That's just a fact. And I tell them if it ever becomes war, there's nothing left in war but casualties. Battles need to be won, or you can acquiesce on one or two. But in general, the parents must win those battles. But if it becomes a war, they need to reevaluate. But what we've found is that those relationships go well with that conversation up front to say, if this is what you want, if this is what the student and the child wants, then that's what you do. You're going to have to listen to your mom or dad. You're going to have to do what they need you to do. And that's been very successful for us to have that conversation. So is this what you want? Because it's typically the student wants it more than the parents do even. And if that's what they want, then they're going to put in that they're getting something out of this. So I said, you're going to have to listen, and when we meet in 2 weeks, your mom's going to tell me who they are. So there's another line of someone to talk to about it. And, because the parents have one more card to play, and that's, hey, we're going to go see Mr. Milan today. Make sure everything's good, or, hey, we're going to go show off. And Mr. Milan always has stickers or prizes or whatever it is for students who are doing well and some great suggestions for kids who aren't. But the parents are very much involved, and I've actually appreciated that part of this with Fuel.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to everyone for sharing your time with us. We realize you're all busy folks. And once again, we will be emailing out a copy of the webinar tomorrow and the benchmark study. So thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.